Our next speaker, Rick Noel, is working on Company Communicator Project number 7 to research your topic. It's a 5 to 7 minute presentation entitled Facebook, Friend or Foe. Rick Noel.
Good evening, everyone. Facebook is fantastic, or at least that's what I think people think about Facebook. And when I say fantastic, I mean it in really every sense of the word, in the sense that there was a movie that was made, just released last weekend, and it actually turned out to be the box office leader for last weekend. It didn't set any box office records, but there's generating a lot of interest. I myself am somebody looking for somebody that's gone to the movie to see if it's as good as it looks like the trailer makes it seem. My talk is actually on whether or not Facebook is a friend or a foe. And in order for you to make that determination whether Facebook's a positive or possibly a negative force in the world, I'm going to share some information on some research that I did. And what's really amazing, and to me why I'm so excited to see the movie, is it's the kind of stuff that I think dreams are built about. These guys sort of, in my mind, followed somewhat of a Bill Gates blueprint, but Mark Zuckerberg was really the head founder. He's the current CEO of Facebook. I think Mark's 26. And he started Facebook when he was a sophomore at Harvard with 3 of his then current classmates. And interestingly enough, when they started Facebook, which I found out doing the research, they actually hacked into the school's computer, and they stole the images for the student ID cards, and they were actually running comparisons on campus to say, comparing to people who was hot and who was not. So it's kind of funny how things start out, and it started actually in February 4th of 2004, and I try to get in people's heads and just wonder, did these gentlemen understand what they were on the cusp of when they started Facebook? I can't imagine that they could fathom what I'm about to talk about next. So Facebook started out as an exclusive club, and it was just for people at Harvard as it started to grow in 2004, and then it moved on to the other Ivy League universities beyond Harvard, and then it went on to all the universities, so it kept getting broader until it finally landed all the way to the high school level and was positioned and promoted to even high school students. So anybody that's 13 or older can get a Facebook profile. And as you can see by the graph, and I understand that you can't read the numbers, but the idea is if you look at the shape of the graph, if anybody's interested in math, they know that this is kind of an exponential curve, that the growth from 2006, about when it really started to pick up steam, to where it is today, over 500 million people, which is really a hard thing to put your arms around. More people that are in the U.S., we'll see what the census says, but I'm sure we're not at 500 million people. That's 1 in 14 people in the world are members of Facebook. Okay, something that didn't exist 6.5 years ago. What I find interesting, if I look at the audience in the U.S., it's not surprising that 29% are people 18 to 25, because that's where Facebook started, in college, and people that were just coming out of high school. And if you go to the smaller segment of what I'll call tweens or teens, that it's like 11%. But what's interesting is that people that graduate college, people that are in their first job in their career, they're about a quarter of the population in the U.S., about 23%. And the fastest growing segment, which this is a huge fallacy, most people don't understand this. I do, because I happen to fit in this part of the pie, that's the fastest growing segment right now. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people view Facebook like they did MySpace, when it was just, something that some bands are doing on the internet. What's interesting is if you take age in the U.S. and then you overlay gender on that, what you find is that based on the current membership of Facebook, it's actually 57% female versus 43% male, which, based on my experience, since I was a kid, I've always found that women in general, I think, are better networkers, and they tend to, if you have a neighborhood, they organize the block parties. They're the ones where the men are kind of more reserved, and it stands to reason to me that Facebook would be led by women. But what's interesting, and actually I'll correlate this to an interesting factoid, that Facebook, for the first time since the beginning of the internet, eclipsed what was the then #1 activity, which, does anybody know what it is? It's Facebook. pornography. Okay, pornography drove the internet. I mean, once it went from DARPA and the schools and beyond the universities, well, porn took over. It was a distribution mechanism for porn. Well, in the last year, Facebook surpassed that as the #1 activity where people spend their time. And what's interesting is men are the fastest growing segment. So except for one age group, men are leading in every category. So they're going from porn to Facebook is my theory. I don't know if that's good or bad, by the way. So Facebook as a friend. So what are some of the positives of Facebook? Well, you can stay connected with friends. It's super powerful to do that with a click of a button on your phone. You can share a video or a photo with all your friends. It's also great to reconnect. I feel like with Facebook, I have like my own private eye database with 500 million people to look up. And as long as I remember their name and sort of what they look like, I can find a little bit about them and reconnect. The third thing is that you can use it to promote your business. You can promote your products, your services, your own brand, and you can do that free. And nothing in life is free. You give up privacy, you give up your time and your input to do that. But I think these are all good benefits that make Facebook a friend. However, the same things that make Facebook powerful on a positive note, i.e. the ability to share information very quickly, is something that we saw in the news recently in the last week. A young man at Rutgers committed suicide because somebody in his school used Facebook to share something that was of a private nature that drove him to suicide. And the sad thing about it is he actually used Facebook to post a suicide note where he said, "I'm going to go jump off the GW bridge," and in fact that's what he did. The other thing is that Facebook's also used by predatory criminals. There's a story in Australia where a woman thought she was going to work in a nature foundation. She was actually posting her interest in that area. Somebody posing as that kind of recruiter actually murdered her. This happened about a year ago. And so it's not just in the US, it's all over the world. And the last thing that makes Facebook a potential foe is that it can suck up the productivity, not only at work, but it can suck up your life. So you cannot let your virtual life become your life. And I've seen it happen. I've been at that end of addiction on Facebook myself, but the key is don't become a Facebook fiend. And then lastly, since I was just here to provide you information, it's up to you to decide for yourself whether Facebook's your friend or your foe.